All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are cracking one of the most frustrating mysteries for any plant lover. It's a story about why perfectly healthy-looking orchids just give up. It involves a hidden killer and a secret that honestly is the main difference between an orchid pro and someone who keeps buying new ones.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? One day, your orchid is absolutely gorgeous, the pride of your collection. And then, almost overnight, it's just a sad, wilted heap. It feels so random, like you messed up big time in just 24 hours. But what if I told you that this tragic end was actually set in motion weeks ago by something you can't even see?
So, the thing that actually does the damage, it's a condition that can turn your plant into mush in no time flat. But here's the twist. That condition, it's just the symptom. It's like the hired muscle. The real mastermind, the true killer that's pulling all the strings, is the very air in your home.
Okay, let's meet the villain of the story, crown rot. It's a nasty infection, usually from bacteria or fungi that just adore wet, stagnant places. So when a little water gets trapped in the crown of your orchid, you know, that spot where all the leaves join together, these microbes have a party. They basically start liquefying the plant from the inside out. It is fast, it is vicious, and it's the reason you're looking at your plant thinking, but it was totally fine yesterday.
But see, crown rot is just an opportunist. It can only attack when the conditions are just right. So to really beat it, we have to go after the one thing that gives it all its power. We need to unmask the true villain, stagnant air.
Just think for a second about where orchids actually come from. They grow on trees, way up in the breezy canopies of tropical forests. They're literally built for constant, gentle airflow. They expect it. Our homes, on the other hand, they're basically still-air deserts by comparison. And that huge difference between their world and ours, well, that's the root of the whole problem.
And this gets us to a really cool scientific idea called the leaf boundary layer. So picture this. Every single leaf is wrapped in this tiny, invisible layer of still air. And the calmer the room, the thicker that layer gets. But it's not a cozy blanket. It's more like a suffocating one. It traps moisture right up against the leaf, essentially creating the perfect little petri dish for all those nasty pathogens to grow.
And you can see the difference right here. With stagnant air, you get that thick boundary layer, which traps humidity, lets pathogens thrive, and basically starves the plant of the fresh CO2 it needs to breathe. But the second you get some moving air, that layer gets super thin, moisture evaporates, fresh CO2 rushes in, and the plant can finally get the nutrients it needs. It's literally the difference between suffocating and breathing. So how much does this really matter? Well, get this. Studies have shown that just giving your orchid a gentle breeze can boost its photosynthesis, that's its ability to make food, by up to 30%. That is a huge jump in energy, and all you did was break up that invisible, suffocating blanket of air.
So yeah, you really should think of airflow as the engine that runs the entire plant. It's what drives transpiration, which is how water and nutrients get pulled up from the roots to the leaves. This is super important for delivering things like calcium, which is what the plant uses to build strong, healthy cells. And when that flow stops, the plant gets weak and becomes an easy target for disease. Now, if you want to get a little more advanced, the real pros don't just track humidity. They look at something called vapor pressure deficit, or VPD. The easiest way to think about it is, it's a measure of how thirsty the air is. It's a much more accurate way to find that perfect sweet spot for your plants, that balance between being too damp and too dry.
This chart really simplifies it. See, if the VPD is too low, the air is basically full of water, and your orchid can't exhale moisture. That's when you're in the rot zone. If it's too high, the air is too thirsty, and the plant panics and shuts down to save water, which causes a lot of stress. You're always aiming for that perfect Goldilocks zone right in the middle, and, you guessed it, airflow is the main tool you use to stay there.
Okay, so we've got the science down. Now let's talk strategy. It's time to stop thinking like you're just watering a plant and start thinking like you're engineering its environment. This is your anti-rot toolkit.
So what's our goal here? What we're trying to create is something the experts call a buoyant atmosphere. You're not trying to create a wind tunnel. No, you're trying to mimic that constant, gentle, all-around air movement of a forest canopy. Air that feels light, fresh, and is just always subtly moving.
So how do we actually do that? Well, first, always use oscillating fans. A direct constant blast can actually dry out and damage the leaves. Second, try creating a gentle vortex by putting fans in the corners of the room to get a nice, slow, circular flow going. If you've got plants on shelves, use fans at different heights so the air doesn't just sit in layers. And the most important one,
You've got to keep those fans running 24/7. Seriously, This is probably the biggest mistake most people make. When the temperature drops at night, the relative humidity shoots way up. That's when water condenses in the crown of the orchid, and if there's no airflow, it just sits there. It's a ticking time bomb. Nighttime airflow is absolutely non-negotiable.
And you want to make sure you have the right tools for the job. If you're in a really humid space, like a grow tent, look for fans with an IP rating of 54 or more. It's just a fancy way of saying it's protected from the dust and water that are bound to be around. And for the ultimate setup, you can get smart controllers that literally adjust the fan speed for you based on the humidity, keeping your environment perfect all the time.
Okay, let's put this all together. Here's your complete battle plan. This is how you win the war on rot, both by preventing it from ever starting and knowing what to do in an emergency if it does show up.
Your best defense is a good offense, right? So here's your daily routine. Number 1, always water in the morning. That gives the plant the whole day to dry out. 2, aim for the roots. Try your best not to splash water into the crown. 3, if you do get the crown wet, no big deal. Just grab a paper towel and gently blot it dry. And 4, don't crowd your plants. Give them at least 4 to 6 inches of space so air can actually move between them.
You also have to know what you're looking for. Bacterial rot is the fast one. It looks watery, gets mushy quick, and can even have a nasty smell. It loves heat and standing water. Fungal rot is usually a bit slower. It shows up as black or reddish-brown spots, and it's triggered by, you guessed it, stagnant air and high humidity. Knowing which one you're dealing with helps a lot.
Okay, so what if you do find rot? It's time for some emergency surgery. First step, excise. Get a clean, sterile blade and cut away every single bit of that mushy, discolored tissue. You have to be aggressive here. Second step, disinfect. Dab the open wound with a little 3% hydrogen peroxide or even just some ground cinnamon from your kitchen. And step 3, seal and isolate. Keep that wound totally dry and get even more airflow around that specific plant to help it heal and scab over.
Which really brings us back to the single most important message of this whole thing. And this quote just says it perfectly. Air movement isn't some optional perk for your plants. It's not a luxury. It is the fundamental, absolute foundation for preventing disease and letting your orchid be as healthy as it can possibly be.
So please, forget about this myth of the green thumb. Being good with orchids isn't some kind of magic talent. It's science. It's about understanding and, more importantly, managing an invisible force, the air. You're not just a gardener, you're an atmospheric engineer for your plants.
And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. We've just seen how something as simple and invisible as a breeze can literally be the difference between life and death for an orchid. It really makes you wonder, what other powerful, invisible forces are shaping our own world right now in ways we haven't even thought to look for?